Morning, everybody. Patricia Worby Alchemy Therapies here. Part of my ongoing daily, it seems now, podcast on the dreaded coronavirus, COVID-19, call it what you will, which seems to have single-handedly destroyed the economy of several major continents. Largely, I feel, because we have panicked in the face of death. And that's what I want to talk about today, this fear that we have of death and the need to keep people alive no matter what, because that is what has driven certainly the UK response, and I imagine the response in many other European countries. This idea that we have a right to life, that was actually quoted in the news. I think it was the health minister in this country who said we must protect the right to life. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, at human life, obviously we're talking about here, not wildlife, which seems to be the destruction we are engaged in, which has caused this virus in the first place by releasing wild type viruses in close contact with humans. The theory is that it's come from dealing with live meat, basically without refrigeration in markets, particularly in China, but it happens throughout the world, so it could have happened anywhere. So I'm not getting at China at all, unlike some people. Unfortunately, this has also become an excuse to be racist. We are in this together as a culture, and actually our culture has been really attacked systematically by the shutdowns. It's our communities that are now pulling through. Thank God we are pulling together. But essentially, what we are hearing is not accurate information, and we are being guided by vested interests, I believe, who, after all, if you look at the scientific advisory bodies, do have links to the pharmaceutical industry. They are obviously also in scientific research, which has its own vested interests to keep research money coming in, of course. Well, I'm not talking conspiracy theory here. I'm just saying people will protect their own industry, their own families. This is the nature of human beings. So the vested interests are saying, without intervention, the UK would have lost up to 500,000 people. But what they haven't told you is how many would have naturally died. And those figures have been, I believe, artificially hyped. And I've published something on my Facebook page today from the BBC News site, where at last people are beginning to question this doom and gloom, Armageddon style projection. Obviously, I'm not trying to minimize the virus. It is very serious for elderly people or the immunocompromised. And if you have somebody in your family like that, as I do, you obviously want to keep safe and keep them well. But this right to life, no matter what, I question that. There is a time we all have to die. There is a time when our systems can no longer fight infection or organ failure, and we slip away. And that is how life is meant to be. But unfortunately, in 21st century culture, we are so distanced from death. It is kept separate from us, and we do not perceive it as part of life. We see it as this sort of foe to be vanquished. We're all going to live to 120. Well, that just simply isn't viable. We cannot continue to overpopulate this planet, which we are doing. And maybe this virus has come along, as well, it is as a consequence of our actions, but also as a fight back from nature to readjust things. We are taking over this planet. We are like a parasite ourselves, actually, destroying our planet. And maybe looking at it in the bigger picture, this virus has come along to rebalance. And I think we have to accept a certain number of deaths are natural and normal. We would normally lose, it has been said, about 8,000 a year from flu, but that doesn't include the natural number, which we think is about 600,000 people per year who die in the UK, including Northern Ireland. So this threat that we've been put under, and I'm sure if you're listening in another country, you've had similar news, that unless we do something, we're going to be overrun with dead bodies in the streets and so on, is really unhelpful. And actually it has provoked the biggest shutdown in cultural life I have ever seen. You know, everything that we normally require and need to feel human. I mean, obviously, food is an essential requirement, but so is community, and so is culture, and so is interaction with others and connection. And that has been completely destroyed by this overreaction, I believe. And we need to get clear heads now and stop panic buying and actually start to look at what the real risks are and mitigate them. Now, things that you can do, firstly, get out of fear. I've done a couple of webinars on that already, because fear depresses your immune system. It raises your stress levels, your stress hormones, and it decreases the energy available to fight things. So for goodness sake, get out of fear, get mobilized, get active. If you can find some, get some vitamin C. I know that that has been derided in the press as quackery, you know, no evidence. There's really good evidence for vitamin C. Dr. Sarah Myhill, who I have very high regard for in the UK, is a GP who has single-handedly changed the way we look at nutrition, I think, in the medical profession, because she has had to disconnect herself from the GP governing body in order to practice sane medicine, which involves using foods and supplements to help the body heal itself. This is a more holistic view. And vitamin C is part of that, because it's extremely good at killing microbes, viruses, but you have to take it in high doses to bowel tolerance, in other words, to the point it gives you diarrhea. That may seem counterproductive for some people, because we're taught to, again, fear our bodies and fear things that come out of our bodies, but actually your body induces diarrhea to clear itself so that the gut lining can be cleansed. Similarly with vomiting, which is for some people part of the virus symptom. Vomiting is a natural thing when the body is full of microbes and wants to expunge them. So don't be afraid to vomit or to have diarrhea. But vitamin C then is very powerful, and you can also add in inhalation of iodine as well in what's called a salt pipe or salt air inhaler. They are very good because they use Himalayan salt to soak the iodine, and then you simply put it to your nose. I'll probably do a webinar on that as well. Iodine inhaled actually kills microbes in the nasal passages, so up through the nose, down into the sinuses, the back of the throat, and down into the esophagus, which is part of the pattern that we're finding with coronavirus, that this particular coronavirus seems to, first of all, obviously it comes in through the mucous membranes, eyes, mouth and nose, and then it sort of lodges. If it doesn't get destroyed in the stomach by swallowing, it lodges in the throat, from where it then progresses to infect your lungs, and that is the point at which you will get lung infection, and that's the really difficult part that is causing a lot of the deaths, because the lungs become inelastic. Oxygen cannot be transmitted into the bloodstream, and so you die of hypoxia. So this is really important information, is to boost your immunity, and that doesn't mean going out and panic buying crap carbohydrate foods, which, although, you know, all of us feel the urge, don't we, to protect our own and make sure we have enough food in our cupboards. What seems to have been happening is people have just been overreacting in fear, of course, but the foods that they've been picking are precisely the kinds of foods that actually will make them more likely to contract the disease and worse symptoms to occur. So high carbohydrate foods, available carbohydrate foods, pasta, pizza, rice. Yeah, white rice can be just as sugar spike inducing as a teaspoon of sugar. It's really powerfully bad for you in terms of your blood sugar. So you know, anything that's basically refined carbohydrates or sugars, it seems to be the kinds of foods that people are stocking up on, in addition to tinned goods, for obvious reasons. And what you really need is fresh fruit and vegetables. And now we're finding that because people are they've filled up their cupboards with things that don't perish, and their freezers in their garages and so on, that they're now turning more to fruit and vegetables, and they're becoming in short supply. So this whole madness has to stop, frankly. And it has to stop because those of us who know better actually lead the way. And that's what I'm trying to do here, because I learned the hard way through getting ill with chronic fatigue syndrome in my 30s through eating what I thought was a good diet. I was vegetarian for 22 years and didn't eat meat or fish during that time. And I'm not here to promote meat eating, because it's a terribly wasteful environmentally, it's a very wasteful thing to do. But some of us do need high quality protein. I do particularly, and I wasn't getting it. I was eating a lot of carbs, and that is what kind of gradually wore down my system. And I became very, very ill at 34 and bedbound for roughly 4 to 6 months. And that is a really profoundly shocking thing to happen to a young person. And we don't want any more of that. And we certainly don't want people getting more chronic disease at this point in time, because they're the ones that become vulnerable when there's an acute incidence of infection, as it is occurring now. So there's lots of things to consider here, folks, but the main thing is get this in perspective, understand that most people will fight this virus pretty well and come out of it okay. You're going to survive if you get it. Take precautions, of course, but let's come together and let's understand that we need to rethink the way we're living, and look after ourselves and look after our planet, which after all looks after us if we do so, but we haven't been. And that needs to stop. We've got to stop assuming we have a right to life over and above everything else. We have to stop the idea that we can fly anywhere, anytime we want, and you know, spread diseases and have meetings in countries where we could do it remotely now. And I think that may change from now on. And the right to have an excess of things, you know, the right to store and be greedy. We don't have enough resources if everybody does that, and that's been made really apparent today. And I just want to stop and reflect on that and say enough. We need to rethink the way we're living, and I think that's what's going to happen. And all good. Take care of yourselves, subscribe, usual place, or contact me on alchemytherapies.co.uk. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.